This conference will now be recorded.
Now, so in the previous sessions, we have discussed creating the web services to be get consumed by the third-party systems in order to connect with your Salesforce instance. So we have created so many web services which can be consumed or which can be invoked by the third-party systems so that those third-party systems can connect with your Salesforce instance to perform the various DML operations. Now, so now today we'll see an advanced feature as part of this web service that is called as Oauth authentications. Oauth authentication. So what exactly the Oauth authentication and what is the use? Why should we go for Oauth authentications? What are the various flows has been given by the organizations as part of this Oauth authentication, and then what are the various flows supported by Salesforce, and how can we use this Oauth authentication flow that is called as username and the password flow. Username and the password flow. How can we use this Oauth username and password flow in order to integrate the two Salesforce organizations through programming to invoke that web service from another organization? Now let's see practically in this case. Now, so first of all, we have to understand what exactly the Oauth authentication. Oauth means open authentication. Open authentication. So what is the use of this Oauth authentication? Now let's see practically in this case. Now, suppose for example, assume that I have a server organization that is also called as provider. Okay, this is the provider organization. This is also called as server. So inside this provider organization, there is a web service. They have a web service inside this provider organization. We have a web service. We have a web service inside the provider organization. But this is very, very confidential and very sensitive web service, which is dealing with some complex operations. So they're protecting this web service, okay, with the help of an authorization server. They're having an authorization server. Okay, they're having a authorization server. They're having an authorization server. So now they're having an authorization server which will be keep on protecting this particular web service from the hackers and from the third-party people. There is a mediator here. So in this case, when coming to this authorization server is keep on interacting with the provider and will be getting some response over here. This is the authorization server. Now, so now in this case, whenever if any of the client organization or the consumer organization wants to access this web service, first of all, they have to contact this authorization server. That means they need to get some permission. They need to get some permissions. They need to get some permission. Based on that permission only, they can able to access this web service. For example, assume that I'm having a client organization at the consumer. I'm having a consumer organization. This is the consumer or client. So now they want to invoke this web service. Whenever if they want to invoke this web service directly, they can't access, because so in front of this server, in front of this provider, there is an authorization server is there. So we need to get the permission from the authorization server, then only we can able to access that web service. Directly we can't access, because this is a protected resource. This is a protected resource which is very confidential, like it may be some payment gateways also, it may be some confidential web service is there, so which I would like to invoke from my client system. So at that time directly I can't access this web service. If you want to access this web service, then first of all we have to interact with this authorization server, and we need to get the permissions. What the permission, once the permission has been collected, then only we can able to contact that web service and we can invoke this. So that previously what happened, we are having the client, we are having the server. Directly client is interacting with the server and it will be giving the response back. But now directly we can't access that server. There is a mediator layer is also there. That means one more authorization server is also available. Then how can we do this? How can we invoke this kind of web services? How can we invoke this kind of web services which are completely protected resources? Then what we can do? So first of all, we have to interact with this authorization server, then get the required permissions, and then only we can able to invoke that web service over there. Now in this case, how can we invoke this kind of web services? Now let's see practically in this case. How can we invoke this kind of web services? Now let's see. Whenever if you want to invoke the web services which are completely protected, okay, which are completely protected by using some authorization servers, then at that time we can use the help of Oauth authentications. Okay, we are using the help of Oauth authentication. This concept is not a new concept. Like for example, assume that, come to a general scenario, let me explain so that you can understand more. For example, assume that today I came to Bangalore. Okay, today I came to Bangalore because of some personal work. So I would like to stay in a hotel, okay, for 3 days, because I'm having some personal work is available over here, or my business work. So because of that, I would like to stay in Bangalore for 3 days. So that I would like to take a hotel room on rent. I would like to stay in a hotel on rent. So now we are having a hotel is available. Okay, we are having a hotel. So now in that hotel, they're having so many resources. Like they're having some hotel rooms are available, gym is available, swimming pools are available, cafeteria is available, so many reception areas there, so many resources are available. Now, for example, I want to take a room on rent, which is an AC room, on rent for 3 days. Now tell me, directly can I enter into that hotel and I can go to the room, I can utilize that? No, there's no such possibility. Directly we can't use that hotel room. First of all, what we need to do, we have to go to that reception. In that reception, we have to give some information. Okay, we have to give some information. Boss, I would like to stay in Bangalore for 3 days. So I need, okay, so one room, okay, on rental basis, which will be a AC room, okay, for 3 days. That means what? I need to inform to the reception people, boss, I need a room on rent for 3 days in your hotel. So then directly they won't give the room to you. So now the reception people will ask you, please show me your identity, sir, because we need some details from your side. So who are you? What is your name and your address? Your identity proofs also, it may be Aadhaar card, or it may be PAN card, it may be passport, whatever. They need some identity, because they're not allocating the rooms for the unauthorized people directly. To the unknown people, they're not allocating that rooms directly, so that they need that identity of the people here. So that we have to show your identity. Like this is my passport, this is my PAN number, this is my Aadhaar card. So that please check my ID cards, and then based on that, so I'm from so and so location. I want to stay in Bangalore for 3 days because of my personal work. So now I want a room inside your hotel, okay, for 3 days. So that I need to show my identity. So once identity has been given to those people, then they will get the confirmation, and then only they are going to be giving that access card. Nothing but they will give the room key to you. We're paying the money here, where we will be getting the room key. Based on the room key, we can go to that room and we can use that room and we can utilize all the resources, whatever they have. We can use gym also, swimming pool also, cafeteria, everything we can use that. That means what? First of all, we have to go to the reception, give our own details. Based on that, get the access card. If it is a 3-star hotel or it may be a 5-star hotel also, they will be giving some access cards to you. Okay, there is no chance of room keys. Simply they will be having some access card. They're allocating some access card to that is nothing but the permission to me that I can able to utilize the resources available inside the hotel. So that here I can use that access card. Based on that access card, I can go to that hotel room. I can swipe my card, room gate will be getting open. I can use that room. I can utilize the resources over there. That means what? I need the permission first. Then only we can able to access the resources. Okay, that means there is a mediator. Directly I can't use that room. So I would like to get the permission first. Like the similar way, come to one more general scenario. Suppose, for example, if a new person wants to join my session, okay, if a new person wants to join my session, then at that time, first of all, they have to contact the institute people. They have to make the payment. They have to give the details. Then the institute people are going to be sharing the meeting link. Then only the person can able to join my session so that they can attend my sessions also. That means what they need the permission from the institute people, capital info people. For example, let's come to one more general scenario. Assume that everywhere you are having the metro trains. Metro trains are available. So in Hyderabad also, Bangalore also, Pune also might be you are having the metro trains are available. So now you are utilizing the metro trains to travel from one place to another place. So now tell me directly can enter into the train, metro train? No. Metro train is available in the second floor. Okay, in the second floor, you will be having the metro train. So if you want to go to that metro train, first of all, you have to go to the first floor. There you will be having a ticket counter is available. Go to the ticket counter, tell me your details from where to where you would like to travel, make the payment. They will give that token to you. That means a small token or a small coupon to you. So now with that token, we can able to enter into that second floor and we can able to travel the distance here. That means what? Whenever you are going to that metro train, so now first of all go to the reception, first of all go to the ticket counter, make the payment over there, then they will be providing a small token to you, a small coin to you. So now with that coin we can able to enter into that second floor because there is a security machines are available. So once you place that coin in front of that machine, it will be authenticating that whether you are the right person to utilize the metro train or not. So based on that, we can go to the metro train and then we can utilize that. Once your travel has been done, you can tell how to drop the coin inside that machine over there at the destination location. That means what? We need a token. Okay, we need a coin. We need a permission. Like the similar way here also, whenever if you want to interact with this particular web service from the client, as a client or a third-party application, anything. If anybody wants to access this web service, first of all, they have to make a request. Okay, first of all, they have to make a request to the authorization server. They have to make a request to the authorization server. Whenever they are going to making a request to the authorization server with the required details here, they're making a request for token. Nothing but we need the permission over here. That permission is called as access token in Salesforce. That permission is called as access token. So that I'm going to be requesting to the authorization server, boss, this is myself, and then I'm so and so organization. I want to invoke one of your web service. So please give me the permission over here. So we need to make a request to that authorization server. Now the authorization server will validate your details. Based on that, it will be giving the confirmation. That means it will be sending the response back to you. It will send the response back to you. Along with the response, it will send the access token. Along with that request, it will send response, it will send the access token also. That means permission. So once the permission is available, then only we can able to initiate that actual resource. Once the permission has been received, then only we can able to invoke that actual resource over here. Request for web server. Now, request to invoke the web service along with the access token. Along with your request, we have to specify the access token also. Boss, already I have the permission, so I want to use this resource. Then the web service is going to be verifying your access token. If it is valid, then it will be processing your request, and then you will be getting the response back. Then you will be getting the response back. Response along with the result, whatever the data, result or data, whatever you want. So this is the process. That means what? Multiple steps are involved. Previously, what happened here? When previously we have invoked some web services, like as Open Weather Map application we have invoked, postal pin code also we have invoked, and then we have invoked that SMS web service also we have invoked. Directly we are invoking the web service, but now directly we can't invoke this web service. There is an authorization server is available. In this case, whenever if you want to invoke these kind of protected resources, if you want to access this kind of protected resources, then we need to use the help of Oauth authentication. Okay, Oauth authentication. So now with the help of this Oauth authentication only, we can able to invoke this protected web services over here. Now, so for that reason, so now we have so many standards are available which has been prepared by the various organizations. Those are called as Oauth authentication. Oauth authentication is a mechanism which is used to invoke that web services, RESTful web services from the third-party systems. Okay, so we can invoke that RESTful web services from the third-party systems with the help of Oauth authentications. Okay, now, so in this case, whenever if you want to invoke that third-party web services by using this Oauth authentications, now we have, as part of Oauth authentication, we are having various flows are available. Okay, we have various flows are available. The first one is username and password flow. Username and password flow. Second one, a web server authentication flow. This is also called as code-based authentication flow. User agent flow. JWT flow, like as JSON web token flow. Like that, we have so many flows has been given by the organizations. So now this is not prepared by a single organization. These flows has been common for all the technologies. For all the technologies, these are the open standards. These are not specific to Salesforce only. This can be these authentications mechanisms we can use for any technology, for Java, .NET, wherever, Salesforce, anything we can able to use that. These are the open standard. These are the common flows, the common standards through which we can able to make two applications can integrate. So now, as part of this Oauth authentication is going to be supporting the Salesforce since Winter 11 release. Okay, since the Winter 11 release itself, nothing but since the 2011 onward. That means almost 9 years Salesforce is supporting this Oauth authentication. Oauth authentication is supporting the Salesforce since the Winter 11 release. That means almost 9 years Salesforce is purely supporting this Oauth authentications. So now, as part of this Oauth authentication, so now the most important one is we have to understand the username and the password flow. In most of the applications in the real time, we are going to be using this Oauth authentication with username and the password flow. Each and every flow will be having its own significance, its own process, its own sequence of steps are available over here. Each and every flow will be having its own process, its own steps. We have to follow those steps. Then where these steps are available? Inside the Salesforce documentation. Inside the Salesforce documentation. In that Salesforce documentation, they're clearly describing each and every flow, and then there are steps also, how to follow, how to implement this particular flow to connect to the third-party web service. So they're clearly describing inside that Salesforce documentation. Now let me explain that. Now, who are the two readers? Now, so how can we invoke the third-party web services by using the various of flows? Now, so now as part of this Salesforce, they have given the various of flows are available over there. Now, so now in this case, what are the other Asian flows? Salesforce has given the various of flows to you. What 2.0, okay, web server flow, and then user agent flow, JWT bearer flow, and then so 2.0 device flow for IoT integration. So now you'll be having the asset token flow, and then demo. Okay, the asset token. There is a demo is available. Refresh token flow, username password flow, SAML bearer assertion flow, and then connected dynamic client registration for external IP API gateways. That means this is the OpenID. Okay, OpenID connect. Okay, like that, your various of flows has been given by Salesforce over here. Okay, various of flows has been given by Salesforce. So now, as part of these flows, we need to use, okay, the most of the case that we are going to be using the username and the password flow. When you go to this username and the password flow, they are going to be indicating what exactly is flow and how can we invoke the third-party web services. Now, you will be having some set of steps will be available. Then how to implement that, we'll see practically as well. And then, as part of this implementation, how can we do this one? They have given some sequence of steps over here. So Oauth the 2.0 username and the password flow for special scenarios, they are indicating that how can we invoke the third-party web services from a client organization in Salesforce. Now let's see practically in this case, how can we implement this Oauth 2.0 flow. Now let me explain that steps first, and then we'll see the practical implementation part as well. Now whenever if you are going to be using this Oauth 2.0 username and the password flow. So whenever if you want to use that OAuth authentications, then we need to use the help of a feature called as connected apps. We have to use the help of a feature called as connected apps. So what exactly a connected app? Connected app is nothing but a special kind of application given by Salesforce, which is used to invoke that REST API web services from Salesforce. That REST API web service might be implemented by the Salesforce people, or it may be from Java, .NET, anything. In order to invoke the RESTful web services or the REST API web services, okay, from Salesforce, then we are using the help of connected app. Connected app is a special kind of application given by Salesforce, which is used to invoke the RESTful web services. Now, so now as part of this connected app, then how to create the connected app first? So what kind of information connected app will be getting generated? Connected app is going to be generating the two keys to you basically over here. Connected app. Connected app. So connected app is nothing but a special kind of application. You know how to create the custom applications in Salesforce. Like the similar way, we have a feature called as connected app in Salesforce. So which is used to, so invoke that third-party web services, which is used to connect to the third-party web services. So that Whenever if you want to connect to the third-party web services, then we are using the help of connected app, which is going to be generating the two codes over here. The first one is consumer secret. It is also called as client secret, and the consumer key. Consumer key. This is also called as client key. Client ID. This is also called as client ID or and the client secret. Client ID in the sense consumer key, client secret in the sense consumer secret. So these are the two authentication codes will be generating by the connected app. With the help of this connected app, with the help of this consumer key and the consumer secret, we can invoke the third-party web services also. That facility is available to you. Now, so in this case, when coming to the connected app is nothing but a special kind of application which is used to invoke the RESTful web services. So connected app is going to be generating the client ID and the client secret. That means consumer key and the consumer secret through which we can able to authorize our application, authorize that server, and then we can able to get the access token. Based on that access token, we can able to invoke that respective web service also. Then how can we do this one? Now let's see practically in this case. So now what needs to be done in order to implement this OAuth authorization? Now let's see practically in this case. First of all, let me explain the process over here. Okay, let me explain the process over here. Now, so observe this one. Here we are initiating two requests here. One HTTP request for the authorization server, and then we are getting the response. Get that response, parse that response, get that access token which has been given by the authorization server. Then with that access token, make a request to that actual web service. So that here we can get the response back. So that two requests and then two responses. Now, so now here also in this case here. So first of all, we have to invoke a request to that authorization server and then get the access token. Based on that access token only, we can able to invoke that actual resource. For that reason, whenever if I'm using this protected resources, then at that time we are going to be using the help of authorization server. So now based on that authorization server will be getting that actual access token. Based on that access token only, we can invoke the respective web service.
Guys, can you hear?
I think he is on mute.
Okay.
Now, now, So in this case, how can we use this? In this case, we are going to be using this OAuth authentications in order to invoke the third-party resources or the protected resources. Now, so then how can we use this connected app in order to invoke the third-party web services? Now let me explain practically. First of all, let me give the steps, and then I will show you that practical example on this. How can we invoke this third-party web service? Now, so what needs to be done is, let me explain the steps pictorially first, and then we'll see how to implement this one practical part. As part of this OAuth username and the password flow. As part of this username and the password flow, what are the various steps are available? Let me explain those steps. Now, for example, assume that I have a provider. I have a provider organization. This is the provider organization that we have at the server. So I'm having the provider organization. Inside this provider organization, I have a RESTful web services available. Okay, I have a RESTful web services available. I have a web service over here. I have a web service. Assume that this is the web service which I have right now. I have a web service. If you're having a web service, every web service contains a specific name, right? Yes. It will be having a resource name. For example, for my web service, the resource name is case manager service. Okay, case manager service. Assume that. It may be any resource name. Upon creating the web service, already you have given some resource name. So now assume that this is the resource name, for example. This is my resource here. Now, so this is the provider. Inside the provider, they're having a web services available whose resource name is case manager service. Now, so now in order to protect this particular resource, okay, they're having an authorization server also. There is an authorization server. We have an authorization server over here. We have an authorization server. So we are having an authorization server right now. This authorization server is going to keep on interacting with the provider, and it will be getting some response. Now, so in this case here, I'm having a client organization. I have a client or the consumer. I have a client organization. So this is my client organization. Or it is also called as consumer. I'm having the client organization or consumer organization. So now whenever if the client wants to invoke this web service, then first of all, they have to contact the authorization server. How can we contact this authorization server? To connect to the authorization server, there should be some URL, right? Yes, there is a URL. So what is that URL here? How can we connect to that authorization server? So whenever I'm connecting to the authorization server, it should be having some URL. Then for this URL, we have to pass some input parameters here. So now for this authorization server, we have to specify that input parameters. That means we need to pass input parameters. So boss, I'm so and so, I would like to access your resource. Now then what needs to be done in this case here? So in this case, we need some input. Okay, we need some input. Now, so that here. So whenever if you want to make your web service to be accessible by the third-party system, first of all, we have to give some information to those people as well. So what we need to do in the provider side, we have to create a connected app. Okay, in the provider side, we have to create a connected app over here. This is also called as resources server. Is also called as resources server. So now here in this case here, we need to create a connected app. We have to create a connected app. So whenever I'm going to be creating a connected app, now the connected app is going to be generating two authentication codes. The first one is client secret. This is also called as consumer secret. Okay, client secret or consumer secret. And the second one, it is going to be generating the client ID or the consumer key. It is generating client ID or consumer key. So now here we are going to be creating a connected app over here. As part of this provider side, we need to create a connected app. Inside the provider side, we need to create a connected app. So now the connected app is going to be generating the client ID or the consumer key, and then it is generating the client secret or consumer secret. Now, so now here we are going to be creating a connected app inside this. Now, along with that, we have to create one user account also inside this, or else you can share the existing user account details also. So we have to create one user account details. So we have to pass one user account details also. Like as we have to pass the username and the password. We have to pass the username and the password. Now, so now in the provider side here, what we need to do is inside the provider organization, we have to create a connected app. Whenever I'm creating a connected app, it is going to be generating the two unique codes. First one is the consumer secret. Second one is the consumer key. That means client ID and the client secret. And then we should have one user account over there, and then based on that user account only, we can able to connect to that third-party web service. Now, so in this case, in the provider side, okay, in the provider side, we need to create a connected app as a step one. And then as a step two, we need to create one user account over here, which will be having the username and the password. And then, so now when coming to that, this resource server or this provider or the server, it is interacting with this authorization server. So authorization server is going to be keep on interacting with this provider. It is interacting with the provider. Okay, it is interacting with this provider. Now this is the setup we have to do in the provider side. At the provider side, first of all, we have to create a web service. Second one, we have to create a connected app. Third one, we have to create a user account. These are the three things we have to do. Once it has been prepared, once it has been done, so now if you want to make this web service can be accessible by the third-party system. If you want to make this web service can be accessible by the third-party system, then at that time the client has to pass some input parameters. That means client has to authorize. How it can authorize over here? So based on this key. Now, so now here in this case here, suppose for example, whenever if you want to protect your resources, because if you want to protect your household item, you are purchasing a key, lock. So now those people are providing the lock along with the key also. They're providing the lock along with the key. So now with that key only we can able to connect to that. We can able to unlock that key and then we can able to utilize the resources. We can open the doors and anything. So now here in this case, here also once the provider side they are preparing the connected app and the user account, whatever the consumer secret, consumer key, username and the password they have prepared, all these four information they have to pass to the client. They have to pass to the client. So now whatever the four details they have collected, these are four details. They have to pass to that client. The client should receive the client ID or the client secret. So client ID and the client secret. Along with that, they should receive the username and the password. They have to collect that username and the password. Username and the password. So they need to collect all these resources here. So once the resources has been getting collected over here, once the resources have been getting collected, then they have to make a request to that authorization server first. That means the client has to connect to that authorization server first. The client has to connect to the authorization server first. So they have to make a request. They have to make a request to the authorization server. Boss, please provide me the permission to invoke that actual web service. We have to make a request. So now whenever we are going to be sending the request, then what are all the parameters we need to specify over here? So upon making a request, we have to include that the client ID, the client secret, username, password, and the granted type. And the granted type. These are the five input parameters we need to pass to that authorization server. Authorization server is expecting these five input parameters. As part of this, the username and the password flow, we need to collect all these five input parameters and we need to pass these input parameters to that third-party system. That means to the authorization server. Authorization server will be receiving all these input parameters over here. Authorization server will receive all these input parameters. Authorization server will be receiving all these input parameters over here. We have to make a request to that authorization server. So now what is this authorization server URL? How can we connect to this one? Now let me explain. Whenever if you want to connect to this authorization server, we are having a specific URL is available. Let me go with that URL here. So in this case, to connect to that authorization server, you will be having some URLs are available. Now, let's see authorization servers URLs over here. Now inside your documentation itself, Salesforce will be clearly indicating that. So now authorization server URLs. Oauth authorization flows, endpoints. Now, so in this case, whenever if you are going to be using this, okay, whenever if you are expecting the access token, then we have to use this one. So now this is the URL. login.salesforce.com/services/oauth2/token. That means I am expecting an access token over here. In order to collect the access token, to authorize your request and to collect the access token, we have to use this URL. Now, so this is the authorization server URL over here. This is the authorization server URL. So this is the authorization server URL which we need to connect. So we have to make a request. Okay, we have to make a request to this authorization server first. So now along with the request, we have to pass client ID, client secret, username, password, and the granted type. Once you are passing all this information, authorization server, what it will do is, whatever the client ID, client secret, username, and the password you have supplied, then it will verify whether it is correct or not. How authorization server is connecting to that provider, nothing but the actual server, it will verify whether this client ID and the client secret, username, and the password is correct or not. If it is correct, it will be getting the response over here. Once the response has been getting received, then the authorization server is going to be preparing one access token. Then it is preparing a access token over here. It will prepare an access token. That access token will be sending to this client application as a response. Now, it is preparing that access token here. It will send the response along with access token. Now, it is preparing the response, and along with that response, it will be sending that access token also to you. Now, so now once you are receiving this access token, then we have to parse that JSON format of content. That means response will be available to you in the form of JSON format. Okay, response will be available to you in the form of JSON format. So that we have to collect this response, and then we have to get the actual access token. With the help of this access token, then we can able to invoke the actual resource over here. Okay, once the access token has been received, then we need to initiate for that actual resource. Then we have to initiate for that actual resource over there. Now, as a step 3, we have to initiate for the actual resource. Now initiate the request. Initiate the request along with that access token. So whenever we are going to be initiating the request to the actual web service with that URL. So now, for example, my web service might be having some URL over here. Like for example, how the web service will be having the URL. This web service will be having the URL like this: HTTPS, like some AP16, whatever the server number, ap16.salesforce.com/services/apex rest/case manager service. Case manager service. Now, this is my URL of my web service over here. Whatever the web service that I have configured, this web service will be having this kind of URL. It will be having this URL. This is the endpoint of this URL over here. This is the URL. So now here we have to initiate this request for this particular URL along with by passing the access token. Then what that actual server will do is, whatever the request that you have received, it will collect that access token over here. It will go to that authorization server whether this access token is valid or not. If the access token is valid, then only they will be getting the response back over here. Then it will send the response back. Then it will send the response back along with the result or data. This is the process. This is the process we have to follow as part of username and the password flow. So now initially as a step one, then what needs to be done here? First of all, we have to go to the provider organization. That means we need two Salesforce accounts. This is some organization one. Organization one. Assume that this is belongs to my organization, like as some myself. And then this is the organization two, Salesforce organization. This is a Salesforce organization, which is belongs to some Rakesh. Okay, which is belongs to some Rakesh. We have two Salesforce accounts are available. One is provider, second one is consumer. Assume that we have one of the person in our batch, that is Rakesh. So now Rakesh has implemented one web service. It's a very complex web service. He spent some lot of time. He has prepared a very good web service to perform some operation, but to connect some banking systems. Now, okay, now I want to use that web service. Now, as a Firoz, I want to access that web service. So I have requested to Rakesh, I want to access your web service. So please give me some permission. Then what Rakesh will do is, Rakesh is creating one connected app over here. With the help of this connected app, he is going to be generating the consumer secret and the consumer key, and he will be creating one user account inside that. These four information he is sharing with me. Okay, he's sharing this four information with me. Now I will collect those four information. Then I am going to be making a request to the authorization server, because Rakesh has implemented a web service which is a protected resource. Okay, which is a protected resource, which is very, very confidential, very, very sensitive. So another is the people, hacker people can't hack that one. So for that reason here, okay, for that reason, so now Rakesh has protected that web service from by using an authorization server. So in this case, whatever the client ID and the client secret and the username and the password has been shared by Rakesh, I will collect all these four information. Then I will make a request to that authorization server. So now, boss, please give me the permission to access that actual resource which has been prepared by the Rakesh. So whenever I'm making a request to that authorization server, then authorization server will verify with that Rakesh server. It will verify whether this is a client ID, client secret, username, and the password is valid or not, correct or not. If it is valid, it will get the response. Based on that response, it is generating one access token. That access token will be sending back to that client. Okay, that means to me, so as in the form of response in the form of JSON format. So now once I have received this response, then I need to collect this access token separately. That access token I would like to use, and then I need to initiate that actual resource over. This is the actual web service I need to initiate. So along with that, initiating this web service, we have to pass that access token also. So now, whenever I'm passing this access token to this website third-party application, okay, based on this resource endpoint URL, then it will collect that access token. It will verify whether this access token is correct or not, so that it is interacting with the authorization server. That means these are communicating with each other. Once the access token is valid, then the provider will be processing that web service. It will be executing that. It will generate the result. The result will be sending back to the client system, so that the client can collect that response in the form of JSON format, and then they can able to initiate this as well. They can able to display that information wherever they want. They can store inside the database also. They can display on the visual first page also. They can use this information for another web service also as an input. You can do anything whatever you want. This is the actual process we have to follow as part of this OAuth username and the password authentication flow. Okay, we have to follow this process over here whenever if you want to invoke the web service, okay, by using OAuth username and the password flow authentication. Okay, now this is the actual process we have to follow over here. Inside this provider, we have to prepare this one as a step one. First of all, you have to create the web service. Second one, create a connected app. Third one, create a user. If you are going to sharing the complete user details, already existing user details, no problem. Okay, and then as a step 4, we need to forward these details to the client. The client is going to be initiating the request over here to the authorization server. It will be getting the response. from the authorization server. Then we have to initiate that actual resource, and then we have to get the response here. These are the total 7 steps are available, okay, as part of this OAuth username and the password flow authentication. Now, how to do that, we'll see the practical example in tomorrow's session. Okay, in tomorrow's session, we'll see the practical example. So today I'm not feeling well. That's what here I'm taking the session for 1 hour. So now tomorrow we'll be having a long session, so that I will show you the 2 examples on this OAuth authentication, how to implement this flow. We'll see practically. Second one, I will show you how to invoke these web services from a future method. That means future callouts also will show you practically in this case. Okay. But please remember this flow.